it was good economic times for Calgary, and so there was a very positive attitude on campus. There was a push to get big donations to the university, and during my 4-year term, Dick Haskayne gave a large sum of money, and the Haskayne School of Business was named for him. Stephen Schulich gave a big sum of money, and the engineering faculty was named after him. The Libin family gave a big sum of money, and over at the University Hospital, the Libin facility bore their name. And as I went back and looked at the history prior to my term, I think that those were exceptional years for raising funds for the University of Calgary. Prior to that, and I was trying to remember the approximate year, the government of the province of Alberta came up with a plan. And the plan was that they would match all donations made to the University of Alberta and to the University of Calgary on a dollar-for-dollar basis. The University of Calgary always claimed to be getting the short end of the stick when monies were given out to the two universities. But when this plan came out, more donations were made by Calgarians to the University of Calgary than by Edmontonians to the University of Alberta, with the result that we were getting more money from the provincial government than they were in Edmonton. And they canceled the plan. We started our project in 1978. It was a project of an organization called the Calgary Booster Club, which was a group of downtown businessmen and women who were interested in supporting amateur sport. And our president came back to a meeting and made the preposterous suggestion that we should bid for the 1988 Winter Olympic Games. And he asked if there were volunteers to do a feasibility study, and Frank King and Bob Niven put up their hands. And that, as I say, was 1978. We had to outbid Vancouver for the right to represent Canada in that competition. And then once we succeeded against Vancouver, we were up against Sweden and Italy. We had worked very, very hard to meet with the IOC members and plead our case. And I had been assigned, along with a fellow by the name of Jack Wilson, to speak to the IOC members in Western Europe. And there were, I think by recollection, something like 20 of the 72 voters were in Western Europe. So we went over and spent 3 weeks solidly in Western Europe talking to these IOC members. I think we were reasonably successful with those people, and other people in the organization talked to people from Asia and talked to people from Africa. We went to Baden-Baden, West Germany in September 1980, and we won on the second ballot against the Swedes. The Italians were out on the first ballot and the Swedes went out on the second ballot. And so when the president of the International Olympic Committee was giving the results, he said, "I am pleased to announce that the 1988 Olympic Winter Games will be held in the city of." Now, the Swedish bid came from a town and the Italian bid came from a town. So as soon as I heard city, I jumped up. And I was the first one up, and Frank was up, and the mayor was getting up, and it was an exciting moment. There was a threat made by the speed skaters in, let me think now, it was 2009, just a year before the Vancouver Olympics. And the threat was that if they couldn't get more skating time at the Oval, 12 months of the year, it was going to hurt their chances of competing in the Olympics. And so a stopgap solution came about. And the speed skaters had their time on the ice, and they did a very, very good job in Vancouver. The longer-term solution was fairly simple to put together. I had experience with the university. I had experience with the Canadian Olympic Committee. I had experience with wind sport. And I I think I had earned the trust of all three of those organizations. So Harvey Weingarten asked me if I would help try to put this thing together. And we met here at the university and spent a couple of days on it. A couple of draft arrangements were circulated. And lo and behold, it came together. And it gave the university considerably more autonomy over its own building. Winsport had all the money from the endowment funds, and they would parcel it out to the university as they saw fit. Whereas under the new agreement, there's a formula as to how much money the university will get, and the university has full control over that. So it's not an arrangement that will last for eternity. That was another significant step we took, and that is we said these buildings last for a period of time. And they were built for the '88 games, so by 2010, they've been in operation for 22 years. And so we said, well, if we get another 25 years out of these buildings, they'll be crumbling. So instead of trying to amortize the money over a lifetime for the attorney, we'll cut it back to 25 years. So it's really all the disposition of funds is sort of tied into a 25-year term. And that gave us more money to spend, and so it all worked out. I had learned that Romeo Dallaire was going to receive an honorary degree from the University of Calgary. And I decided that I should know a little bit more about him. So I read his book, and it's not easy reading. It was a terrible war that went on in Rwanda, and he was right in the middle of it and accused of doing things that he didn't do, and it was just a horrible story. Then he came, and I presented him with the honorary degree, and he gave one of the best convocation addresses I'd ever heard. But he had been burned by what happened in Rwanda. And he didn't let it interfere with what he was talking to the students about, but you could tell every time Rwanda came up, he was hurt. So he said to me on the way out, he said, "Mr. Warren, if there's anything that I can do, give me a call and I'll be back here in Calgary." So I thought about that, and about 6 months later I phoned him up and I said, "We've got something called Chancellor's Club, and we would really appreciate it if you would come and talk to Chancellor's Club about your life." And he did. He said he'd come. And the way it works is that I was at the head table, a circular table, and my wife Peggy was at the table, and she sat next to Romeo Dallaire. And I can't say it changed her life, but she just fell in love with the man. He is so wonderful a man. And that was an experience that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. I think in the 50 years just past, we were the new kid on the block. We had to grow into the responsibilities of being a university, and that took some time. And then there was a maturation process where we had grown to a certain level, but we had to mature. We were sort of like teenagers on the block. We'd grown from being a babe to being a teenager. Now we had to mature. And that process has taken a long time. But I think now, after our growth and our maturity, that we're ready to take on the world. Calgary is referred to as the can-do city. And I think the sky is the limit for this university in the next 50 years. I think we're committed to being innovative, and I think many of the other universities are getting a little old. So if you want to carry the same idea forward, we'll be in our prime and they'll be getting a little old.